So we all know that I have a very big backlog. In fact, if you've watched almost any video on the channel, you've heard me talk about it at least once. So I thought to myself, Destiny's in a lull, I'm not playing World of Warcraft, now's a really great time for me just to start chipping away at it. And that led me to playing God of War for the PS4. And I knew within the first couple of minutes of playing that game that I wanted to do a review of it. So, that's exactly what we're going to do. I have my coffee next to me, I got a fresh bowl of cereal, and without further ado, we're going to dive in. This is 2018's God of War. God of War has had a long, successful life as one of Sony's juggernaut IPs. From its grisly launch on March 25th, 2005, all the way through the PSP, the PS3, the PS4, and soon the PS5. It was a brutal hack and slash that told a tale of betrayal that captured the heart of gamers everywhere. So in 2016, Santa Monica unveiled the next generation of God of War. And about 2 years from that, in April 2018, fans were greeted to the new experience. It changed the gameplay, it changed the story, and Santa Monica Studios set out to tell a more mature tale, as not only has Kratos grown up, a little bit, gods don't age too much, but their fan base has grown up as well. And now, I finally get to talk about it. So, as always, I will try to keep this review as spoiler-free as I can. However, if you haven't beat God of War yet, I highly recommend that you do. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. You can add the video to your watch later, beat the game, and come back and pick up where you left off. So, let's talk story. It has been a few decades since Kratos finished his business with the Greek pantheon, and now he finds himself in Midgard, home of the Norse gods. The exact time frame isn't really known. Some fans state that in the novelization, it says it's been at least 50 years. In the game, there's a line that leads us to believe it's been at least 150 years, give or take. Whatever the case is, it's been a while and the stage opens up to Kratos setting up a funeral pyre for his wife with the help of his son, Atreus. Kratos and Atreus, who he refers to as boy, for most of the game, set off to practice hunting. Upon returning, a tattooed man shows up at their door and antagonizes Kratos, causing the two of them to duke it out. This fight is very cinematic, and while it's not the first big fight of the game, it sets the tone for what's to come. As the God of War finds out, his opponent is immortal. After seemingly finishing off the stranger, Kratos and his son set off to fulfill his wife's last request, spreading her ashes from the highest peak in all the land. Along the way, they meet a few interesting characters, such as a witch of the forest, dwarven blacksmith brothers, the world serpent, and a few others. The story is set up in a way where you constantly feel this tension, not just between our protagonist and those that will come to stand in their way, but between Kratos and Atreus as well. You can really tell that after years of loss and betrayal, Kratos is very closed off, and much of the game revolves around Atreus longing for Kratos' approval. There's a lot of moments throughout this game where the two go back and forth with each other, because while Kratos is trying to do his best to make sure Atreus knows and is prepared for the world that's around them now, that is basically crashing down their door, Atreus is still hurt, and they're both grieving for their loss and working through it together. There's a couple of scenes where Kratos goes to put his hand on Atreus' shoulder, but pulls back. He's afraid to be vulnerable around his son, and when I saw the first scene that does this in the beginning of a game, I knew that this story was going to be much more mature than the previous God of War stories. This wasn't just a revenge plot. This was a story that was going to give us real, proper, in-depth character growth all the way to the end. While they have heart-to-heart moments, Kratos still has that stoic demeanor, and he carries that with him all the way until the credits roll. So that's the setup. Now, there are a lot of twists and turns that Santa Monica takes us through, but I don't want to spoil them here. It's much better if you experience them yourself. However, I will tell you this. There is a secret ending that I actually didn't know of at first. Shout out to Zephinblade over on Twitch for telling me that there was a secret ending. I'm not going to tell you what it is, and all I'm really going to say on it is after a long adventure, there's nothing like going home and taking a nice nap. Now, let's talk about how the game plays. God of War this time around ditches the semi-top-down view of previous installments and goes for a fixed over-the-shoulder camera. Now at first you'd think this wouldn't work with God of War's combat, and you'd be right. That's why Santa Monica decided to give Kratos an ice axe to wield. This slows down combat immensely from previous installments. Kratos has a light attack, a heavy attack, he can toss his axe and recall it on command like a boomerang, and this is also used for solving certain puzzles later down the road. You can swap between your axe and your shield. Now the shield is another new installment. It lets you block attacks, parry attacks, and while you're in your shield form, you attack with your bare hands. Doing this builds up a stagger meter underneath an enemy's health bar. Now, think kind of like stamina meters for games like Dark Souls or Fallen Order. Once that stagger meter fills, you can click in on the right analog stick and perform this brutal finisher that can range from tearing enemies in half, it can range from stomping enemies' heads off, or range from just splitting enemies down the middle via their mouths. It's very reminiscent of older titles, and it will give fans of the older game a lot of nostalgia. Now, we can't forget your son. Thankfully, this isn't an escort mission. Atreus can shoot arrows, which adds to that stagger meter. In fact, it's a great way to start off building up stagger fast and then running in with your fist and finishing up the job. On top of that, he can learn different summon attacks, as well as throw you a health stone every now and then, and resurrect you if you have the proper item. He's an integral part of the combat and has aided me constantly throughout my journey. Combat can also be enhanced in a few ways. Now, God of War this time around is much more RPG-like, so Kratos and Atreus have skill trees that unlock new abilities the more you upgrade your weapons. Yes, that's right, you heard me. Upgrade your weapons. Throughout your adventure, you'll find various pieces of armor for Kratos, enhancements, runes, runic attacks for Kratos and Atreus, pommels for your axe, and upgrade materials. Remember those two dwarves I mentioned in the narrative part? Well, when you visit them with these materials, they can build you new gear and upgrade your existing ones. This incentivizes you to go out into the world, do side quests, search every corner for treasure chests and certain encounters. Encounters like travelers, rifts that need to be closed, and eventually Valkyries that you need to fight. All of them reward you handsomely with upgrades and materials. Be warned though, they aren't cakewalks, so come prepared. You see, it's things like this that really help me to immerse myself in a game even more. Let's take a game like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, for example. Sure, there's a lot to do. There's plenty of side stuff to do. In fact, if you want to know what I think about that game, my review's in the card in the description down below. But the point I'm trying to make is there's a lot to do, but none of it feels important. In fact, a lot of it feels like padding. Here, you have an in-game explanation to go out and explore, to search, to gather things, and it all pays off by the end of the game when you're a hulking behemoth in legendary gear. Besides all that, there are optional realms, buried treasure, as well as a handful of other collectibles scattered throughout Midgard. Certain chests will also contain upgrades to your health and the returning Spartan Rage meter. For those of you who are new to the franchise and don't know, Spartan Rage lets you go full berserk, and every hit you land restores health to Kratos for the duration of the timer. The best part about it is there's an actual in-game reason to do all of this side stuff. Early on in your adventure, when you discover the main hub, Atreus will ask, why are we going around and searching all of these islands and exploring, when Kratos clearly states that their priority should be climbing the mountain? Well, Kratos responds by saying that it's useful to go and do this because whatever they find will aid them on their journey. Now, this change of combat took a little to get used to. But once you're in a flow, you can change some sick combos together. There wasn't much I disliked about the gameplay, to be honest. There were, however, a couple enemy designs that I'm not a fan of. The hags for one, because you have to rely on Artreus to stun them, and the lock-on can be finicky. There were times where I was looking right at them, and I had my reticle right on them, and Artreus would shoot completely in the other direction. Also, there are the Dark Elf Lords. These guys are the biggest pain because they just keep buzzing around and then casting lasers that can blind you if you're too close to them when they detonate. In fact, it almost cost me my life a couple times. So other than that, I enjoyed my time with the game entirely. In fact, at the time of writing the script, I'm still chasing the platinum. Now, there's not too much to do. There's a little backtracking, the optional realms, and a couple side quests. But other than that, it doesn't seem too terrible of a task ahead of me. But we've talked about the story and we've talked about the gameplay. So now the only two questions left to ask are, does it look good? And how does it sound? Absolutely amazing. Visually, this is one of, if not the best looking game on the PS4, hands down. You can debate me in the comments all you want, but I'm sorry, I'm sticking to this. But I should preface this that I did play it on my PS5. However, I also played Assassin's Creed Valhalla recently on my PS5. When it comes down to it, God of War, which is a 3-year-old game, goes toe-to-toe visually with Valhalla. Now, in Valhalla, the vistas are breathtaking, but when you get down to the detailing, it can look a little muddy. But in God of War, it's all crisp. The vistas are breathtaking, and the detailing is great, all the way down to the blood splattering across Kratos' face. From the larger-than-life cinematic moments to the quiet heart-to-hearts, the facial animation and the details is something that we've come to expect out of AAA titles in 2021. And the fact that it still holds up this well 3 years later says something about the love and care Santa Monica took in crafting this world. Now, sound-wise, it's crisp and clean. You hear every grisly axe swing, every thump of Artreus' bow, the visceral crunch of Kratos ripping someone's jaw. All of it does a wonderful job of keeping you centered in the moment-to-moment gameplay at all times. As for the music, congratulations to Bear McCreary. He composed a score that captured the whimsical nature of this otherworldly magic, all the while inducing that adrenaline with these boss encounter songs. Actually, in my research, I also found out that he did the score for King of the Monsters, which actually had a really good soundtrack as well. And thankfully, I'm happy to see that he will be returning for the sequel. You see, when I set out on this adventure, there was something I wanted to do. I wanted to recapture the feeling we had when we were kids. You know that feeling when you're 6 years old? You get up at the crack of dawn, everyone's still sleeping, you run into the kitchen, you pour a bowl of your favorite cereal, you scuttle back to your room, shut the door, make sure the TV's turned down low so nobody wakes up, and you sit there and you eat your cereal and you play your favorite game or a new game from the crack of dawn until whenever, and it feels like no time has passed, and you can't wait to keep playing it again and again and again. Well, God of War did that for me. And that's what I meant when I said it gave me this new sense of fulfillment. I don't know if it's really new. Maybe it helped me find an old sense of fulfillment. But I accomplished what I set out to do, much like Kratos and Atreus. And it was a blast. I knew within the first minutes that I wanted to write a review for this game. I wanted to share my experience with you guys. But now I want to know what you guys think. So let me know in the comments, did you like God of War? Did it leave you wanting? Is it the best in the franchise since God of War 3? Because honestly, until this game, God of War 3 was the epitome of the franchise. But other than that, feel free to like the video if you enjoyed it. I've got more reviews on the channel. They're up in the card and in the description down below. And hit the subscribe button and the bell button if you want to see more. But other than that, I gotta go get more cereal. I got a lot more games to play. I'll see you then.